Uh, Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and a good morning or a good evening if you are joining us from other time zones. I would like to call the meeting to order. I take this opportunity to welcome to this information session of the WTO Committee on Rules of Origin. My name is Eliam Tweve. I am Minister Plenipotentiary at the Permanent Mission of Tanzania to the WTO in Geneva. And at present, I'm also serving as the chairperson of the WTO Committee on Rules of Origin. A core objective of WTO Agreement of Rules of Origin is to promote clear and predictable rules of origin in order to facilitate the flow of international trade. As a result of this objective, WTO members in the Committee on Rules of Origin should be to discuss the impact that rules of origin have on international trade and collectively identify solutions to avoid unnecessary obstacles to trade. This is precisely what motivated our today's webinar. Our session today is a reminder about the need to simplify rules of origin. In fact, rules of origin are among the most common trade barriers cited by companies engaged in international trade. Therefore, this webinar will be an opportunity to share experiences about projects that are being implemented by different WTO members to facilitate compliance with the obligations related to rules of origin. We will have 6 speakers who will share their knowledge and experience with us today, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to them for that. This webinar will be moderated by Mr. Darlan Matt, who works for the WTO Secretariat and is the Secretary of the Committee on Rules of Origin. I will now ask him to introduce you the program and the speakers, and therefore I wish you fruitful discussions.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and good morning and good evening if you're joining us from other time zones. As Elia mentioned, my name is Darlan Marti, and I work for the WTO Secretariat. I've been with the Secretariat for the past about 12 years. And at present, I am serving as the Secretary to the Committee on Rules of Origin here at the World Trade Organization. For those that might not be entirely familiar with the work of the WTO and the work of the committee, let me simply say that the committee is the forum where governments can come together to discuss any trade-related aspect of the impact that rules of origin have on international trade. And the objective of this exercise in the committee should in fact be to promote simple and predictable rules of origin and the smooth application of these requirements. And members have been focusing their attention both on non-preferential rules of origin and on preferential rules of origin as well. We're very lucky today to have 6 excellent speakers and 6 excellent presentations that will be sharing insights about the need to simplify rules of origin and also a few projects that are being implemented to facilitate compliance with rules of origin, both the rules themselves and the proofs of origin and the documentary aspects related to origin. We will start first with this overview, in fact, about quantification of the impact of rules of origin simplification on international trade, and then we'll move to compliance with the rules themselves, and then compliance with documentary requirements. And in about 2 hours, this webinar should be over. If you have any questions, feel free to send them through the question and answer function of this Zoom meeting. We'll be monitoring that box, and we'll see if we have time. We can certainly get a few replies from the speakers. And before we actually start, let me also just say that the presentations and the video recording of this session will be made available through the Rules of Origin page in the WTO website, so you can have access to the full presentations and recordings through that means as well. So let us start with the first speaker. Simon, can you confirm that Jaime was able to connect? Okay, so Jaime, who's our first speaker, was having a few issues connecting. So perhaps we can start with the second speaker. The second speaker is Ms. Laurens van Nietzen from the from the European Commission. Ms. van Nietzen is Trade Affairs Manager in the Origin team in DG Trade. She's involved in the negotiation of several FTA agreements for the Commission and the implementation of these agreements as well. And she's contributing to the development of a self-assessment tool that she will demonstrate to us now, which in fact I think carries a big potential in terms of helping MSMEs and operators who might not be entirely familiar with origin requirements, help them comply with product-specific rules of origin. So, Laurens, can I give you the floor now?
Thank you. Yes. Do you hear me and do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Super. Thank you, Darlan. So you explain well who I am. So I don't need to present me. So in fact, we developed this tool, what we call self-assessment tool, indeed, because through survey and investigation, we realize that not only for LDC and SMEs, it's difficult to know and to get information on the rule of origin, but also for other players. So we developed this tool, and I will do a demonstration. So in this tool, we have all the rule of origin in all EU trade agreement or preferential agreement like LDC. So here I will do a demo for LDC. The advantage of this tool is that you will have to, you by replying to simple question, you can yourself perform a self-assessment to determine whether your product comply with the rule included in the EU trade agreement and therefore qualify for preferential treatment. And I would say that the beauty of this tool is that the operator will only see the rules that are relevant for their product they want to export, and they will not have to bother with other provision, because we know that there is many provision. It's very heavy, the rule of origin, so the tool will only show the relevant rule. There will be always clear explanation, example, and links to the relevant legal text, so that the people can always check if indeed, and to know exactly the legal text and to be really sure that they comply with the legal text. Finally, Rosa show all the proof that the people have to made out to obtain a preferential tariff treatment. But then I will start. This tool is in the Access to Market platform. My internet is very slow, so perhaps at the end of the presentation, if you have still the question, I can show you how to accede to this tool here. So accede already to Access to Market. And if you go to Home or in Good, you will find this page where you have to enter the code of your product, here manioc, for example, from Burkina Faso to Belgium. I do a search and even have to further precise which product it is. So this Access to Market, I have plenty of actually option to help trader, but here I really show only the rule of origin self-assessment. So once you have entered your code, select the destination, you see the tariff preference that you get. So GSP EBA benefit from zero duty. And then you go on your left side, there is an entry called rule of origin self-assessment, and you can start. So the first page recap that in order to qualify, your product need to be originating, and then you can start the self-assessment. And you have the first page where start the self-assessment. Just a little things, as I am in Burkina, I'm French speaking, so just for you to know that we are in a process of translating this tool also in all language, so it will be more easy. And then I will shift in French. So, donc je dois vérifier si mon produit est originaire du Burkina Faso. Je lis simplement donc ce qu'il est écrit. Veuillez sélectionner l'option qui s'applique à votre produit. OK. Et je lis que mon produit est entièrement obtenu au Burkina Faso. C'est un peu et je lis encore que cela concerne des produits agricoles, les poissons, etc. Effectivement, mon manioc est un produit agricole, donc je dois probablement être dans cette catégorie, mais je ne suis pas tout à fait sûre. Et donc, j'ai toujours une explication de la règle. Et là, je peux voir en fait qu'est-ce que c'est que entièrement obtenu. C'est expliqué. Donc, votre produit est entièrement obtenu s'il est mentionné dans l'article 44 et s'il correspond aux conditions. Et j'ai même ici une fiche qui explique effectivement quelles sont en général les conditions. Pour un produit, par exemple, pour un végétal, il doit être cultivé ou récolté. Mais je ne suis pas sûre, je peux aller voir le texte légal en français et je vois bien le texte et je vois bien que la plante et les produits du règne végétal doivent être cultivés ou récoltés. C'est bon, c'est le cas, je peux dire que c'est le cas et donc je vais retourner dans ma page.
Lawrence, can I just
Oui.
ask you to switch back to English, please?
Okay.
If you
Sorry.
don't mind.
Okay. Sorry, I thought it was in two languages. Okay. I will switch back to English then. Sorry, I saw that it was I should have asked first. I will continue in English. So I'll go back in English. So indeed, I'm sure that now my product is originated. I click here. And so you have also a navigation bar to tell you where you are in the process of assessing if your product is originating. I continue reading, and here I have a question about the principle of territoriality, that to be sure that all the process that confers the origin took place in the territory of the party. It is the case on the manioc, so I say yes. And you have in 2 clicks, you see that the machine already answers that based on your answer, your product is originating. So you didn't have to bother about cumulation, about absorption, about any other rule. With 2 clicks, based on the answer, the machine already tells you that it's originating. And we are in the phase about the proof. But before continuing this, perhaps, I don't know how much time I have. I can show you quickly another more complex example. I don't know if you want.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. So I will give you another example where I prepare it, but I have to find it. Voila. For example, I take a machine, export from Cambodia to the EU. Again, I start the self-assessment. In this case, it's not a product only obtained because I have imported non-originating material. If even I don't know what it is, non-originating material, because I am SMEs, you have a mouse over, and normally you should appear, you should have the definition, but you need to click correctly. Where is my mouse over? It should appear there. It was appearing. Voila, you see that, voila, the machine explains you what is non-originating. And indeed, you can say that I have imported non-originating material, part and component, so I'm in this situation. I go to next, and here you have the product-specific rules that apply to this product. So for those who are familiar, you are the famous CTH. You have a value-added rule expressed in terms of foreign content, so maximum 70 foreign content ex-work price. And again, I don't know exactly how to read that. For example, you always go to rule explain, and you have, again, always a fiche which explanation. This rule is explained, it's more simple words and with example to really understand how to apply this value-added rule. And even you have the formula, what are the exactly parameters of the formula, what are the denominator, what is the denominator, what is the ex-work price, what is the value of non-originating, everything is explained really to facilitate the life of the operator and to understand how they have to calculate this value-added rule. So I go back to my thing. It's true that I made a mistake. Sorry, I went. I have to restart quickly. So I'm here. Oof, Sorry, I I took another example. It's not a good example. I'm a little bit lost. Voila. So I have to close this one. Sorry, as I try to go fast, I mix up a little bit the page. So I restart here. My product is so I'm really sorry. Now I'm in Cambodia. I prepare several examples and now I mix up everything because I try to be fast. Voilà. Voilà, here I am in my Cambodia example. So a machine, rule explanation, I close it. And even in case sometimes you know that you don't comply with the product specific rule, so you click none of the above apply to my product because I cannot comply with one of the specific rule. And there we appear all what we call the flexibilities in this tool, which is all the principle that can help you, flexibilities that can help you to comply with the product specific rule. And you will see that in the case of Cambodia, you have also, but first we record that the absorption principle exists. You can go there and have explanation. The tolerance, but the tolerance, voilà, what is the value of the tolerance in the GSP agreement? And the machine tell you that indeed you have what we call bilateral cumulation with the EU. You have also, in the GSP scheme, we have also the cumulation with Norway, Switzerland, and Turkey. And furthermore, you have what we call the regional cumulation. So all the time you can click on this link to have more information on these different flexibilities. And you have to again reply to the question if you can use one of these flexibilities. And for example, I can say that here with regional cumulation, yes, indeed, I use material from other countries. So yes, it is true. It is true. So I click here. I say no here, for example. Yes, here. No, no, and no. My product is not a set. I go to next, and then the machine tell you that based on your answer, now that you know that you have some possibility to use bilateral cumulation or regional cumulation, the machine as a tool asks you if again you fulfill one of the product specific rule. And now that I know that all this flexibility exists, indeed I can say that but now it's true that taking into account the bilateral accumulation and the regional accumulation, I can fulfill the value added rule, for example. Again, you have the same question, which is a principle if you fulfill the principle of territoriality. And always in all EU trade agreement, you have always to check if whatever you do, even if your product fulfills the product specific rule, you go beyond the minimal operation. And I can say yes, yes. If you click there, again, you will see the minimal operations that are included in the GSP agreement. And then in the same way, I arrive to, so it's the first step of the self-assessment to check if the product that you want to export is originating. And indeed, you see that based on your answer, your product is originating in Cambodia. Now I arrived to the second step, which it's how to document the origin of your product. And the machine tells you that you are an exporter located in Cambodia because you choose Cambodia to the EU. And you can therefore self-declare that the product is originating in Cambodia by making out a statement of origin, and you can click there and you will have the fiche that explain you all the condition to make out a statement of origin that you have to be registered. You can even click there and you will have all information, even for the GSP, how to be registered, etc. You have to, this fiche explain you what is the statement that you have to draft, how to fulfill the footnote, etc. You have also information about the validity and the record keeping. So it's a very, oh la la, I close, sorry, I mixed again everything. Voila. So I'm here. So indeed, I can click that. Well, it's the only possibility, but in some case you have several possibilities. You have several ways to document that the product is originating. In this case, only one way, so you have to click this option for sure. Then you have so you are already about transport, because you know that in the different agreements, the transport conditions are a little bit different. Some of the EU FTA, and in the case of GSP, allow the splitting of consignment in hubs. So it's what we call the non-alteration rule. And well, you can be, for example, a Cambodia exporter to the EU, but you are the producer or the exporter, and you have no clue how the good will be transported. You can also have a function that I don't know, and you click there, and voila, it's the last part. You arrived to the self-assessment, which somehow recap all the answers that you have to provide.
DEMELO, DEMELO.
Sorry, I have some voice, and then
I'm online right now. Jaime DEMELO is.
Sorry, I hear a voice. I hope you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to cut the voice.
Well, so you see that this result of the self-assessment recap all the answers that you have provided, and the machine tell you that the tool tell you that indeed, based on all the answer, your product is originating in Cambodia. You have to take care that it's not a legally binding document, because it's really a self-assessment, and for sure we don't know if the reply that was provided were true or not. So it's really a self-assessment to help the operator to check if their product is originating, but it's not a binding document. On the document on origin, the tool tell you, recap you, that you need to make out a statement on origin to indicate that your product is originating. And again, you have all the details. It was a fish that I show you to recapitulate really all the information. And we put this sentence for all third party. Given that you are not located in the EU, you still need to check what is the procedure to make a statement on origin. And finally, it's a recapitulation of the transport condition. Voila. I hope, voila. So there is a few other functionalities that I can show, but I believe because of the time constraint, I will stop there. I hope that you see that this tool is really trying to really focus only on the element and showing the provision and the articles that are relevant. We have tried also to make clear what kind of document need to be provided, also to facilitate the life of the operator, to be very precise. And each time they have fish where really all the important information is gathered. And in this way, the operator can both check if their product is originating and know how to document that the product is originating.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. I think this is clear. And of course, this is a very complex tool. I mean, I think we understood that there's a lot of information behind it. And the beauty of it, of course, is to try to centralize all these requirements in a single tool that guides the user step by step. Of course, I think as we can also see, it still requires to be familiar with the tool, and it requires users to be familiar with a few some terminology related to rules of origin, originating products, non-originating products, cumulation. So even in terms of replying to these questions, this requires a little bit of information. Now what I propose is to hear the experience of another tool that has also been developed in the same spirit, trying to help users identify and self-assess their compliance with rules of origin. That's the Origin Advisor. And who will be presenting the Origin Advisor to us is Mr. Brian Staples, President of the Trade Facilitation Services. Brian is president of the Trade Facilitation Services, an Ottawa-based consulting group that provides assistance on matters related to origin. And in addition to resolving problems related to origin for private clients, he has also been involved in capacity building projects on customs and origin matters. Brian is also a long-standing member of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and the International Chamber of Commerce Commission on Customs and Trade Facilitation. and he's president of the Origin Experts Group, a software development company that provides public and private sector clients with origin determination assistance tools. So Brian, can I give the floor over to you so that you present to us the Origin Advisor, please? And I believe that we'll be streaming the slides for you.
Yes, thank you very much, Darlene. And hello, everybody. And thank you for processing my slides as well. That's greatly appreciated. I'd like to thank you, Darlene, and the WTO for this invitation and setting up this event, which I think is very important and interesting, especially if you're an Origin zealot like myself. So I do intend to talk briefly. I don't have the courage of Laurence to do a live demo, but I can give you some screenshots at the to talk about how our system works, and also to mention, as was requested, what were some of the conditions that led to us developing the system, and those conditions, how are they reflected somewhat in the tool that we're developing. So if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. This is going to be actually the longest slide, given time constraints, talking about the conditions that, the need for tools like this. And I would like to say that I'm a big fan of ROSA. It's a great system. We monitor it and watch it fairly closely. It's got tremendous amounts of detail, and it's not an easy thing to do. And so ROSA has done a very, very good job on a huge volume of trade and product specific rules. But so what were some of the issues that led to this? So first of all, I think I have to start off with saying, what's the old expression, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay, so being an Origin zealot, and my partners who are also Origin zealots, everything we look at looks like an Origin problem. That could be even current issues like reshoring and friendshoring and building resilience and all those issues have huge Origin dimensions to them, and that's so we have a sort of we're Origin nerds with the Origin specific view of the world. But but how did we come to realize that there was a need for this? Well, basically, I'm a private sector person. I've never worked in a customs authority or a trade department. I've always worked with customs brokers, importers, exporters, manufacturers, and worked with them to work collaboratively with customs authorities around the world, close to, I think, 55, 60 countries or something like that. And so as a practitioner, I have the benefit of being a bullet. I can deal with issues one at a time. And, Origin issues can be very complex, as Laurence pointed out. So I might spend, days, hours, and sometimes weeks, maybe not every hour of weeks, but they can be very challenging. But I'm just working on one issue, the origin of a chicken pot pie or an air conditioning unit or something like that. But the more I traveled and worked with customs authorities in other countries, I realized they were facing huge volumes. So they had a problem of scale. Like, how do we bring this issue to scale? And of course, the same problems are associated with the private sector, in the sense that, private sector people always like to say things like, private, companies trade, not countries. And so this is an issue for us. So that was sort of our first years ago, just realizing the multiple sectors, the high volumes that certifying entities are dealing with, and also the problems of, associated with the private sector. The other thing that came through very clear, just from being the practice of being an Origin practitioner, is just how HS, or Harmonized System, intensive Origin is. It hasn't been qualified, but I think you could safely say that, most of the HS, most Origin issues are, in a sense, HS issues. You have to have the proper classification of the finished product. You have to have the proper classification of the inputs that went in to make that product, all in the answer to the question, the one simple question for Origin, which is, what did you import to make what you export? But that's it. So HS intensity sort of guided our thinking and our approach. And then, of course, the whole issue about the structure of the rules being complex. Obviously, that's the case, but not readily understandable by non-experts. And by non-experts, I mean both government authorities and customs authorities and private sectors, because to my experience, or to our experience, broadly speaking, customs authorities know rules of origin fairly well, but they don't know how things are made. And private sector people know how they make what they make, but they don't know rules of origin. So there's this sort of there's a gap there between each of them not being non-experts, and the origin process is really those two parties talking back and forth to each other about the material facts of their production. Do they satisfy a particular rule of origin condition? And the other is not just a content complexity, but there's complexity also in what I call the context. And the context here, which it relates to origin liability. So very quickly speaking, origin liability always rests with the importer. That's just the way customs law works. And so we have this sort of mismatch of rights and obligations. You have the exporter who is obligated to come up with some information, but it's the importer who's always at risk. So we try to keep the importer perspective in mind, and because he's the one facing the liability. And this liability, the importer liability in origin, applies regardless of the certification regime. This could be self-certification, chamber certification, or government customs certification. So those are some of the criteria and issues that led us to look at a system. So we'll just go on to the next slide. And now I can start moving a bit faster. This is just a quick slide to emphasize origin complexity and HS complexity and how they live together, because you have to have, if you don't have the right classification of the finished product, then you're going to get the wrong rule of origin. And if you don't get the right classification of any imported inputs, you don't get the right product. So HS was critical in our mind. And so we can move to the next slide. But I did say that the importer certification, importer liability is there always, regardless of the certification regime. But of course, self-certification has become more prevalent, more popular, whatever word you want to use for it. But in self-certification regime, SMEs are more at risk because the importer is looking for origin literacy from the exporter, from the producer. So he wants to know that because he's aware that he's at risk. So we had this complexity, and it's really it's using technology like with ROSA and to what I call delaborize part of the process. But I should state that I believe, at least for our tool, and I think it's probably true for ROSA and other tools that are out there, is that this tool does require some origin literacy. It's really designed to be an origin determination assistance tool. There's no automaticity or no magic. It does require some give and take and information back and forth. So that is a precondition for ours, and we're working on a sort of a mini MOOC, if I could call it, a small introductory video, so that people would have some general awareness and then be able to use the tool. But the tool is designed for high volume users that have some basic origin literacy. Next slide, please. So those were the conditions. So we just needed something very simple and intuitive for the user, and that's what we have come up with. And it's called the Origin Advisor. And we can move to the next slide, please. And so what we have done with the Origin Advisor is we combined a system of rule code. We've coded, I guess, close to 20 or more free trade agreements. And we code the rules themselves, and we combine that coding process with a classification engine, which itself is also a HS determination assistance tool. In this case, we've chosen to combine with Avalara's classification engine to ensure the application of the correct rule. So basically, our system combines HS, and the HS system, Avalara system, I should say, is an AI system, not a machine learning system. It's an AI system, an expert system that's based on the rules of the HS itself. And then just a lot of coding of hundreds of thousands of product specific rules. So we wanted to, as with Rosa, to reduce the complicated language of origin to just questions and answers, and also provide an origin audit trail, which is important because of that liability issue. So, like I say, the next slide just shows this. We wanted to sort of make it look and feel like a Google page, and you just need, as with Rosa, the introductory, what is your exporting country, and then what is the product. And at this point, this is where the HS kicks in. I won't spend a lot of time on the HS. We think it's critical, but either if the party knows the classification of their product, they can insert it, or you can see the query box there. And if they don't know exactly what their product is, then they will be taken into the HS engine through a series of questions and answers that it never guesses the system, the classification system, and to come up with a proper classification. So that's maybe one distinction between our system and others. So you start off with that, and then we have to identify the materials. So just the next slide, please. In the next slide, so what happens basically is, I would say our system is more sort of built around the concept of coding the rules of origin, but also working around the bill of materials approach to determining origin. So you'll see there, if the person does not know the classification of the machine, the 3CE will say, well, what type of parameters, how is it properly classified? Funny that we're in the same chapter as the Rosa example, but there are quite a few different classifications there. And by the way, once the final classification has been determined by the solution, then there is also a classification certificate that can be used. In other words, you could say, you could supply customs authorities, say, this is the general interpretive rules of the HS, and this is how I determine the classification. So you have an audit trail for the classification as well as the origin. But so the basic parameters you're asked to fill in, we have 3 basic columns here, and there's restricted materials, other materials, and materials that the user can add. So restricted materials, what we've done there is we've taken the materials that have to be originating in order for the finished product to be originating. So those are materials that where there's a restriction to a tariff shift, for example. So those materials are already listed on a per HS basis. Then we get into the whole process of the bill of materials and adding products other than those that are restricted or that have to be originating in and of themselves. So if we can just go to the next slide. So that's when we start putting in information and materials that might be used. Of course, this is a very simplified example, but if the classification of tubes, parts, and also boards, because some of these washing machine classifications require have the option to be classified separately. They have electronic control boards, which most of us have these days. So the user then puts in the products and the country of origin of the products, and they are asked, as you can see, they're asked whether they were made in Canada or not, because Canada was our country of export. So basic material, a bill of materials information is added, and then and of course, during this whole process, the user can click on the particular rule of origin or an explanation of the rule of origin. But here, a lot of that is being done behind the screen by our process of coding. So just go to the next slide. And so we put in the preliminary information, we're using the example of the CPTPP and the EU-Canada agreement in this example, and it says it gives you an example of the applicable rule. You can click on there and go see the rule, and it's saying, well, this is the rule, but we don't. There's still information lacking for us to be in order to satisfy it, and then you would click on to resolve. So if we just take to the next slide. Here it's saying, well, that some additional information is required. And of course, this is the flexibilities that Laurence mentioned. There's de minimis, there's other tolerances, accumulation, bilateral, full accumulation, all that is incorporated in the system. But in this example, simplified example, we see it's saying the goods don't seem to be qualifying. We have to know some de minimis information. Please enter your de minimis values. And so in this screenshot, we're saying, okay, we do have some materials that don't meet the rules of origin. They only make a total of 9%, whereas the allowed by the agreements under consideration, it's 10. So you would continue, and we just go to the next slide. And it says, okay, well, in this case, because you've filled out the de minimis information, that you do comply, and you could, and so on and so on. You could continue this. You could go to drop-down rules or alternate rules like regional value content and the like. But this is the basis of the system that we've developed. I guess we can go to the next slide. So as in most other origin systems, we do have an audit trail, and it would record all the information that has been input by the user, so that they could share that with either with the client, the importer, or with customs authorities. But that's where that information is included. You would also have an HS certificate if you use this tool to classify the goods. And it then talks also about these other transportation and documentation restrictions and obligations that occur. So basically, I guess we can move on to the next. We're basically trying to address all rules. The user here, Canada's been on a bit of a diversification trail recently. So you could have multiple agreements. So the user might be put in his bill of materials, and it would tell him of the agreements that have been coded. You could export, these, products, these speakers, let's say sound speakers. Looking at your bill of materials, you could qualify under any one of these many agreements, or you could just restrict it to one agreement if you wanted to. But we're really just trying to simplify or delaborize the process. As I say, the importance is classification, and you can go one at a time, one agreement at a time or not. So that's in a nutshell, that's our approach. Yet we're happy to say that we're working now with government authorities and private sector groups around the world: China, Vietnam, Australia. North America is more corporate. Large corporations are looking at this. And we also had the good fortune of participating recently. The World Chambers Federation initiated a project called the Genesis Project. And this project, which I think will be addressed later on in this morning, but that project is a project by the World Chambers Federation to introduce what we call quality control on self-certification statements. And that project has been successful. They had a pilot project, and during that pilot project, people had access to our tool. And the pilot project is very interesting and has moved forward and is expanding. And we hope to work with them on that process. And the final slide is if we could just move to the next slide. Oh, okay, it's just a testimonial. I'm not going to read it, but because many of the chambers are not familiar around the world. They're familiar with non-preferential origin, but they're still relatively new to the world of preferential origin. And so we have a Canadian testimonial from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. And so that's, that's us in a nutshell. I look forward to the other presentations and listening to people that I read a lot but have never met, and look forward to your questions, this morning or at any time. Thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think it stands out again that, this system again has the beauty of centralizing so much information and so much knowledge, and we get the complexity, of course, of doing that. And again, I think users would need, as you also said, a minimum level of literacy related to rules of origin in order to utilize the system themselves. So I think after these two presentations, we can all see a live demonstration, of course, of the complexity related to rules of origin, how the rules are designed and how the different requirements overlap and overlay in order to qualify or not your product for preferential origin. And therefore, perhaps what we could do now is have an overview about the need to simplify rules of origin. And this is based on a study that has recently been published by Julien Gourdon, Karine Gourdon, and Jaime de Mello, who will be making the presentation for us. Jaime, of course, is Emeritus Professor at the University of Geneva and Scientific Director for FERDI. And he's well-known here in the house, works extensively on trade issues, and was a consultant for the World Bank, IMF, OECD, SECO, IGC, and the World Bank and several governments, and has also been editor-in-chief of the World Bank Economic Review from 2005 to 2010. So, Jaime, can I ask you perhaps to walk us through this study and explain a little bit what you were trying to find out and what the results of the study are?
Thank you, Darlan. I hope my voice is carrying correctly.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I just listened with great interest to these two presentations, where I noted, among other things, that in the presentation, both presenters said, well, in order to use these simple tools, we still need to know or to know a little bit about rules of origin, or to be literate about it. So this reminded me of the first time I saw I saw really the literature on rules of origin was when Anne Kruger in 1995, 96 said, I don't understand in NAFTA, the NAFTA agreement is 80 pages, but there are 600 pages on rules of origin. Now, why do you need 600 pages for that? So in essence, that is the problem. This has been extremely complex. And that's why you need to have these tools that are being developed. By the way, there's also another tool that could be relevant. I'll mention it. It's developed by the ITC. They have something called the Rule of Origin Facilitator. I'll mention it in the presentation. This is another sort of similar tool to the ones that were presented here. So let me go quickly through the paper. The paper is very simple. What it's trying to say is trying to look at and to see, well, really, once we dig into these product-specific rules of origin, now there are quite a few of them. There are about 54,000 different coded rules of origin across a sample. It's not all the preferential trade agreements. These are just preferential trade agreements that are reciprocal. So you also have the non-reciprocal, which sometimes have also different rules from the ones we are examining. But here you have basically, if you look at all of them, you have up to 54,000 different rules of origin that have been coded, at least in the ITC Rule of Origin Facilitator. So the question you may ask is, well, we really do need rules of origin, and we do know that preferential trade agreements are going beyond the gap because the agenda covers more items. We know this is good. It's opening up the trade system for those of us who believe that there are benefits to that. And we also know that rules of origin are necessary, and they're necessary especially to prevent cheating, that is repackaging to qualify for preferences without substantial value added, and transshipment, although in practice this is really not relevant in developing countries, because to transship among countries in a free trade area, the costs of transshipping, if you're going to do it, are substantial and usually more than the preferential margin. So it's really not profitable. So really, what are rules of origin there for? They are there to prevent cheating or repackaging, whatever you want to call it, trade deflection, but also they're there to encourage vertical integration. And this is the latest example of this is the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, in practice, what we have written, and we is not a very long list, but a list of academics that have been looking at this for a while, the conclusion of all this is that in practice, PTAs are giving with one hand, you're giving preferences to your partners vis-a-vis the rest of the world. The amount you're giving in the preferences depend, of course, on the MFN tariff, but also on how many, it also depends on how many other free trade or preferential trade agreements you have. And the other one, it's also taking away with rules of origin, which are costly. Now, in the old days, you could see whenever you could get preference, you could get data on preference utilization, which now exist, and they notably countries have to turn them into the WTO, but they're not. Very few of them are available to the general public. But still, what is shown is that the uptake, the preference utilization rates have been going up. So they're fairly high. Does that mean that the rules of origin are not costly? Well, not quite. I mean, if they're not used, then it's either they don't know how to use them or it's too costly to use them. So it's better to have relatively high preference utilization rates. But we still are left with, well, I wouldn't say the impression, but the general feeling that they are unnecessarily costly. So what we're trying to do in this paper is to estimate what might be the effects on bilateral trade among countries that are engaged in reciprocal free trade areas. So the next slide shows what we're doing is we're asking, are product-specific rules, do they affect bilateral flows? And if so, how much? And are the more flexible rules of origin, after controlling for other factors, are they resulting in more bilateral trade than in the same HS6 categories of trade flows that have stricter rules of origin? Okay, now we're not the first ones to have explored that, but we're now the first ones to explore this with a very large database. This is the Deep Trade Agreement Database, which you can see on the next slide. The World Bank Deep Trade Agreement Database. It's not as extensive as the rule of origin facilitated at the ITC, which is available, but all of the data is not downloadable as it is in the World Bank. So we use the World Bank database for 159 RTAs for product-specific rules of origin, for 218 regime-wide rules of origin. Okay, so this is what we have to start with. So I'll just try and take you very quickly through what we did. And the bottom line, if you are interested in the bottom line, is controlling as best we can for omitted variables that might affect the intensity of bilateral trade flows in that database. We do find that at the HS6 level, those HS6 level products that have more lenient rules of origin have a greater expansion of trade after joining the trade agreement than those that have strict rules of origin. So let me tell you how we go about defining the strict and the flexible. Now, of course, this is all simplified and somewhat arbitrary, but you have to know what is done in order to get your own judgment. So next slide. Okay, so this, many of you who are here listening in this know a lot about this. That is, you know that there are two basic criteria, the wholly obtained and then the substantial transformation criteria. And the substantial transformation criteria can be further disaggregated into these, what I call four standalone rules and 3 composite rules. Now, those of you who have just listened to the previous 2 conversations, you're going to say, my God, this is so, you're oversimplifying. I mean, how can you do this? Because the world is much more complicated. Well, yes, of course it is more complicated, but in order to do any kind of statistical analysis, somehow we have to simplify. This is what we did. So we took standalone rules and composite rules. So you can look at what they are. I don't want to go into the detail, but you can guess they are plausible aggregates. So we work with these, and each one of these 7 different rules is coded at the HS6 level for the 150 or whatever it is. Trade agreements are in the database. Next slide. Okay, so the following. For those of you who are interested, you can go and see what do we mean or how do we go into these different rules, okay, and how they're coded. For instance, for value content requirement, we have those with less than 35%, more than 45%, and so on. So we classified or subclassified them. We also classified technical requirement. These are all standalone rules. Then the next set are the more complicated one. The next, these are from the TPP, and those essentially are either combination, which is very tough because not only do you have more than one rule, but instead of having an alternative rules, you choose one of several rules. You have to satisfy several rules. So the combination rules are more clearly more complex than the standalone rules. And if you have a VCR of 60%, let's say, rather than 40%, well, you know, at a given level, at a given product, that the 60% is more restrictive than the 40. But once you've said that, there's not that much you can say. Sometimes, of course, the wholly obtained is difficult, and other times it's very easy to satisfy. So it's kind of difficult to make sense of which ones a priori do we think are more difficult to satisfy. And this classification is more or less trying to build ex ante what could be different categories that you could argue are sufficiently different in their likely costs. Next slide. Okay, so the descriptive stats, I don't think we have much time to look at that, but what you'll see here are the frequency distribution of preferential margins into bins. So we have bins, 5, 10, so on. We have 50 million observations, so we have quite a few data points. So there, we put them in bins for each one of these 7 categories, okay? And then we look at the preference margin in each category, okay? So the bins, so we have the bins go from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and so on. And on the right-hand side, you also have what are the what is the distribution of these different rules of origin across the bins. So, for instance, you see here that the flexible rule, alt rule, which is the big black line, it's in the 10 to 20%. So, the flexible rule, well, it's concentrated in that range. Well, it's not a problem, but there's only 5 or 10% of the rules that are flexible. That is, that you have a choice of alternative. Next slide. So you can see that here. Here you see the distribution of each of the 7. And what you do see is that you only have 27,000 rules that are alt, that give you choice. All the others, 2, 3, 400,000, they are not. They are either single or they are composite. So the alt, the flexible, there are not that many, I mean, compared to the others. So you see what the median preference margin is, and you also see the huge dispersion of margins. When you have such a huge dispersion of margins, it's going to be very hard to do any kind of statistical analysis, which nonetheless we're trying to do, and this is what we did, and the next 3 slides are just about that. So we run a model. Basically, the model, we try and say that we look at the intensity of flows between 2 partners for a given product K, which is at the HS6, and in a time category. So the time we have six periods. So it's 1990, 95, 2000, etc. So it's a panel. It's not yearly. It's a panel data set. And then what we do have is we look at what is the preference margin. So you would think that the higher is the preference margin. Of course, the preference margin is approximated here, even though it's not quite correct, by the tariff, the MFN tariff. So if your MFN tariff is high, then the bilateral flow among partners that don't have to pay you're going to expect that'll be greater. So the expected sign of these parameters are what we pretty much what we would expect. And at the end, what we do have is those 7 categories. We have these beta 4, which are these coefficients that were estimated after controlling for other factors for each of the 7 different categories. And what we're trying to do in the next 2 slides and see, which one gives you the most? Now, the most is relative to what the excluded category. The excluded category is comparative. So you look at alternative, and you see alternative is about 2% more after controlling for all other factors, with a 95% interval. So it's statistically significant. And you see also the wholly obtained and so on. So when you go down, the further down you go, the less you get, or the less increase in bilateral trade after controlling for the preference margin. Next slide. Okay, so this is my last slide. So there, what we did is we simulated what would happen if we replaced the exception, composite, trade restriction, wholly obtained, CTC, and VCR rule. We replace those rules with the alt rule. And then we look at what would happen if you simulate with the estimated coefficients, what would happen if you changed the rule of origin and made it more flexible. So you see up to 3%, and of course it's non-OECD to non-OECD developing countries. That's where the margins are higher, and that's often, in many cases, where these rules of origin are tough. Then when you do OECD to OECD, well, you also get a benefit, but you see it's about half of what it is on the other. So my next slide is just a conclusion. And what we've done here is we say this is first documented evidence on disaggregated trade. Well, just because it's data, this World Bank database, also done with the in conjunction with the WTI, is just made public. So we got the opportunity to do that. And what did we find? Well, we found that stricter rules are associated with less bilateral trade. Well, of course, that's what you expect. That's what you get. Again, the orders of magnitude are what they are. You can work with them or not. Then the question is, do you need then do you need rules that are as complicated as they are? I remind you, or those of you who don't remember, when ASEAN started, ASEAN had very simple rules, 40% and basta. And then they made them more complicated as they went along. But those were very simple rules of origin in this free trade area. And as we know, ASEAN is what some people call Asia factory. There's a lot of bilateral trade among the countries, and they had simple rules of origin. So you may ask yourself, if you really want to stimulate trade, well, maybe what you want to do is to simplify them. That is to have them business friendly rather than business owned. When I used to teach a course at the World Trade Institute, I had these young budding lawyers who were students. We had half economists, half lawyers. The guys, the lawyers, oh, you work on rules of origin. My professor, my law professor, says this is the gravy train. So anyway, that's my last word. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. Yes, very good, very comprehensive, quite a complex study. But I think the takeaway really is that simplification of rules of origin can lead, can foster bilateral trade between preferential partners, and I also take away that the rules of origin that most promote intense trade between partners are those that have alternative options for businesses, followed by wholly obtained, and those that hinder most trade are those that combine cumulative requirements and therefore require the companies to show that they comply with multiple cumulative requirements. That's quite, I think, instinctive, but it's fantastic to see the statistical evidence that you were able to pull from this analysis. So having looked at product-specific rules of origin in this first part, what I propose now is that we move next to more documentary and administrative requirements related to rules of origin. That's basically proofs of origin, so certification of origin, certificates of origin, and self-declaration of origin. And to first provide an overview about what the trends in this area are, we have the pleasure of welcoming Ms. Soo-Hyun Kim, who is a Economic Affairs Officer at the Trade Policy and Facilitation section in the Trade, Investment and Innovation Division at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And Ms. Kim is responsible for managing multiple capacity building projects at UNESCAP, particularly related to trade digitalization, and with a focus on cross-border paperless trade and electronic exchange of data. So, Ms. Kim, we would be pleased now to hear you present us some of the trends related to rules of origin and digitization of processes from the UN Global Survey on Trade Facilitation and Paperless Trade.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Just confirming if you can see my presentation clear and well.
Yes, we can hear and see your presentation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So as I have been kindly introduced, I'll be focusing on the electronic certificate of origin, how countries are transiting to digitalizing that procedures. So as the earlier speakers were commenting and elaborating about the complexities of the rules of origin, my presentation would be focusing on documentation as mentioned. So for the certificate of origin and other trade documents, there are attempts from countries to transiting to electronic data exchange. So in my presentation, I'll be showing that trends of ECO based on the UN Global Survey on Digital and Sustainable Trade Facilitation. So to give you the context, let me introduce the survey itself first. So it's a jointly conducted by 5 United Nations regional commissions covering global regions, plus UNCTAD, and me at the UN ESCAP. We are the regional commission for the Asia and the Pacific leading this survey. So this is a survey conducted every 2 years biannual, and it monitors progress on trade facilitation. By doing so, it is aiming to support evidence-based policymaking, capacity building, and technical assistance. So since 2023, we also have UNCTAD as our full partner, and you can access that interactive database at untfsurvey.org. But let me give you the scope of the survey as a background for my presentation today. So the survey would cover 60 trade facilitation measures, and in 2023, we have covered 163 countries, so it's a truly global survey. It starts with the general TF measures, which are what we call WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement related measures. And then we add in other matters such as digital, sustainable, and other areas of trade facilitation. Let me just briefly talk about the data collection approach of the survey. So we start with the data collecting from experts, and I have to stress that this survey is a fact-based survey. It's not opinion-based, but it's fact-finding. But in order to ensure the comprehensiveness and accuracy of the data, we validate and we check on the experts who are responding to our survey in terms of their expertise as well as their reliability. So once the data has been collected, the UN regional commissions and UNCTAD will be validating and verifying these data through desktop research as well as further interviews with the experts. With these, we will finalize the draft results, which then would be sent to the governments for final validation through the official channel. So by this three-step approach, we are ensuring the reliable and comprehensive data to be collected for all the trade facilitation measures. To give you the perspective where the electronic certificate of origin implementation lies, let me give you an overall implementation level to start with. So in 2023 survey results, the global average implementation rate was at 69%. When I say global average implementation rate, this covers the general, where I mentioned about WTO TF related measures, plus digital paperless and cross-border paperless trade. So as you can see in this figure, there are quite a variance of implementation rates among different regions of the world. So you can clearly see that there are some leaders in this area overall, like developed economies, also Southeast and East Asia leading all the developing countries, whereas Pacific Islands and some other regions are falling behind. So if I look at it a bit more details regarding different trade facilitation areas that the survey is focusing on. So as I've said, the general TF measures, WTO TFA related, these refer to the first three groups: transparency, formalities, in institutional arrangement, and cooperation. You can see that the implementation rate of 2019 in green, 21 in red, and 23 in blue. So as you can see, the WTO TFA related measures are relatively well implemented, over 70% as of 2023. Whereas for paperless, and especially cross-border paperless trade, has been implemented relatively low, despite the good progress made over the past 4 years. When I refer paperless trade and cross-border paperless trade, it refers to, once again, digitalizing trade procedures at national and domestic level for paperless trade and cross-border across the borders. So now, let me take you to the specific two measures that we contain in the UNTF survey for the certificate of origin. The first one is electronic application and issuance of preferential certificate of origin. We do look at different aspects, various aspects of that, including whether the relevant procedures of electronic application and issuance has been published for the relevant stakeholders, as well as if the paper documents are still required in addition to this electronic application and issuance. This is quite important because what we have observed in some of the countries surveyed is that even though the legal framework as well as the technical settings and paperless trace systems are already available for electronic application and issuance, the regulatory agencies are still requiring the paper documents, which is, of course, a duplication of the efforts, as well as it doesn't really help the entire purpose of moving towards digitalization of trade procedures for more efficient and simplified trade procedures. I have to note that this electronic application and issuance, we are looking only at the preferential CO. So if you look at the percentage, which refers to the proportion of the countries that have either fully or partially implemented or pilot stage, you can see that roughly about 30% of countries have fully implemented this measure of electronically applying and issuing preferential CO. If we look at the different regions in terms of the implementation level, the very right corner refers to the global average, and the rest are different regions of the world. So once again, we are looking at 2019, 21, and 23 results of the survey, and you can see that some of the regions have progressed, some are a little bit more or less the same, but you can clearly see that there are a great deal of divergence of implementation level across regions. It is worth noting that some developing regions, specifically Middle East and North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, has achieved a very high level of implementation rate relatively in 2023. So there's a good progress and there's a good catching up of these developing countries, but still there are a big variance of the implementation level. If you look at the countries with special needs, namely the LDCs, least developed countries, LADCs, landlocked developing countries, as well as states, small island developing states, they are falling behind the global average, as you can see. Now, moving on to the second measure, which is under the cross-border paperless trade measures. So it's electronic exchange of certificate of origin. So here we are looking at both non-preferential and preferential CO. And as same with the electronic issuance and application, we are looking at different aspects of electronic exchange of COs. So we do look at which countries that they are exchanging these COs, plus the proportion of these partner countries who are exchanging in order to evaluate the trade volumes out of the entire trade volumes. We also look at the legal recognition by government authorities. This is crucial. So when you are exchanging these documents electronically or data electronically without the legal recognition, it's quite likely that you would be required to submit the paper-based documents once again or in addition. So looking at these the different areas of electronic exchange of COs, we have identified only very small portion, much less than 10% of the countries are fully implementing these measures. For the partially implemented, it's about 40% of the countries overall. Once again, looking at the different level of implementation across the regions, I need to note that in order for better readability, I have only limited the access to 60%. So it might look better implemented than the earlier slides, but it is only up to 60%. And as you can see, once again, there are big divergence between different regions of the world. I would like to note that Southeast and East Asia are leading the implementation, and that would be supported by the sub-regional initiative. Basically, ASEAN single window, where Artiga E Form D is lively exchanged. So this highlights the importance of these sub-regional and regional initiatives, in addition to the capacity of the individual governments and economies. So once again, when you see this implementation level of electronic exchange between countries, compared with the electronic issuance and application at national level, it is quite natural that this electronic exchange would have lower implementation rates, because even when your national systems are ready and fully functional for electronic data exchange, you do need additional interoperable systems in order to exchange the electronic documents and data across the countries and across borders. Also, as I've said, the legal recognition is a very crucial matter in order to validate and really having a valid data exchange electronically across the countries. So it's quite natural that we are witnessing lower level of implementation for this electronic exchange of COs across countries. Once again, when you see these countries with special needs, these are much falling behind of the global average. So you can see that these countries with special needs would require special attention, as well as specific support according to their own needs and requirements. So with that, I just wanted to add what are happening in Asia Pacific in terms of digitalizing trade procedures. So there is a UN treaty called Framework Agreement on Facilitation of Cross-Border Paperless Trade in Asia and the Pacific. It's a UN treaty open to all ESCA members, i.e. Asia Pacific countries. And the reason that I am mentioning it here is because this is a treaty which is specifically aiming on facilitating cross-border paperless trade. So that would cover different trade documents and data, including the certificate of origin. And we are really looking at some of the regional initiatives and regional discussions that can bring this agenda forward. We are specifically initiating some of the pilot projects which could see the feasibility as well as the viability of the exchanging electronic documents and data. And I would like to note that the framework agreement is really complementing the WTO TFA agreements, WTO TFA, because in order to achieve, so our aim is same. We would like to achieve more efficient and simplified trade procedures, but we are focusing on, by digitalizing the trade procedures, we would be aiming that we would be achieving that objective. So in that regard, framework agreement is a good supplementary to the WTO TFA. We have the treaty has entered into force in 2021 with currently 12 parties. So with that, I would like to say thank you for all the participants listening. And I would really like to encourage you to visit the untfsurvey.org website, where you can actually look at the data on trade facilitation implementation at the global, regional, and economy level, and it's interactive, so you can play with it. We also issued a global report providing a more in-depth analysis on these issues, including ECOs. So have a look, and once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soo-Hyun, for this overview. Very interesting overview. And of course, I think what is quite telling is that we can see some regional differences and national differences, especially for the least developed countries and other countries that need special assistance. And that, of course, is worrying. But we also saw in the curves a lot of catching up, very impressive progress into 2023. So I think here in Geneva as well, I think the buzzword has been digitization and trade facilitation 2.0, including in the area of origin. So in fact, what we'll do now is hear about two initiatives in this area, the first one from China and the second one from Thailand. So for the first of the two, I'll ask Mr. Wang Guoyu, Deputy Director of the Rules of Origin Office in the General Administration of China's Customs, to speak to us about China's experience in electronic exchanging origin data. Mr. Wang, you have the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you for your introduction. I'm very happy to be here to introduce China's trade facilitating measures related to rules of origin. Basically, my presentation will cover three measures, which is electronic origin data exchange, just like Mrs. Kim introduced, and also the self-service printing of the CO, and also the declaration of origin. Without further ado, I will start my presentation. Yeah, that's the three contents I will going to introduce. So first, I will discuss about the electronic origin data exchange system, short named as EODS. So in the past 2 decades, China continuously deepened our economic and trade cooperation with different economic entities. Currently, China implemented 19 FTAs and covering cooperation in a wide range of domains. There are 26 economies established bilateral or multilateral partnership with China through FTAs. And we also have special preferential treatment, maybe it's better well known here as LDC PTA, for 44 LDC countries as they exchange their note with us. So during the years, we encountered challenges around by the growing FTAs and the regulations relating to the FTA affairs. So the point is how to achieve the balance between trade facilitation and the revenue security. This is the major concern for us in the recent years. So it is obviously that we turn to the IT technology measures. So in order to establish a roadmap to the solution for the custom control, China Customs has launched the 3S initiatives, aiming to realize the smart customs, smart borders, and smart connectivities. This is the spirit of our current reformed and also our measures. So in this context, the EODS emerged as one of the innovative solutions. So basically, the idea is that the exporting party and the importing party exchange their CO or declaration of origin DO information to each other. However, in the reality, sometimes it is a one-way exchange. So here is the flowchart of the EODS, how it works. first the exporter apply for the CO from the issuing bodies. And if it is the authorized exporter, it can issue the declaration of the origin by themselves. And then after the issuing body issue the CO, they send to the exporting customs. And also the exporter themselves send their DO to the exporting party. And the exporter also send their CO information or DO information to the importers in the importing party. And then before the goods shipped, the exporters declare their goods for the customs. And then the exporting party can send the information to the importing party's customs. And when the importers doing their declaration during the import, then the importing party can already, they can just submit the numbers of the CO, and then the importing party can directly verify it at the real time from the exporting party's data that's they send to them. So for China now, we think this data is very important when exchanging CO or DO. For CO, it is the CO number, the origin country, issuing data, HS code, a quantity, unit of quantity, and the criteria. And for DO, we think is the DO number, the DO number, the approved exporter code, and also the HS code, the quantity, and the unit of quantity, etc. So, so here is the comparison between the comparison of the customs clearance procedures between the FTA has EODS or without EODS. During the document declaration, the FTA with EODS can just the importing party can just declare their CO number, but if it is without the EODS, you have to send the scan version of the CO. And when customs is checking the data, it is the real-time data verification. And without EODS, it needs to be manual checking if they found any risk during the verification. And then for the verification procedure, since the CO is already verified during the procedure, then it is for customs, it is only the nature of the goods they need to verify. But if there's no exchanging, then the customs need to verify the nature of the goods as well as the authenticity of the CO. So that means with the EODS, the customs can save some times and resources for the verification. And also for the enterprises, there's also benefits for them. It's for them, it's like increasing the clearance efficiency, and also the whole business environment is improved, and also they can feel more happy because they're they can have less money spent on the storage and have faster clearance during the declaration. And for customs, it is also the increase of administrative efficiency, and also can prevent the fraudulence. And also, since the EODS is very important customs cooperation, and based on that, the trading parties can build up the more experience on their cooperation, and for the further project, it's a very good starting point for them. And this is the timeline of China's FTAs that already established EODS. Since 2004, we start with Hong Kong, China, and Macau, China. And then we have Switzerland, China, Switzerland FTA, and then New Zealand, Korea, Pakistan, Chile, Singapore, and Georgia, and also Indonesia under China Asian FTA. And for the following Bangladesh, Mozambique, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and East Timor, it is under our LDC issuing system. We help these 5 countries to build a LDC PTA certificate issuing system. So when they issuing the certificates to China, then the data can send to China Customs in the real time. So. And now the goods, the trade under EODS is already take up like 40% of the trades under those FTAs, under the whole FTAs in the 2020. So it's already taking a very good effect on the trade. So that's for the EODS, and then the second part is the self-service printing of the certificate. So basically, the procedure is like the enterprise submitting application online, and then customs issue the CO with risk control. This like IT-based semi-automatic control, and also then after the application is passed, then the enterprise can self-service printing their own CO. So in this case, there's no need for the enterprise to get a stamp and a signature from the customs, and also to increase the security of these measures, we also introduce several security controls measures, like the enterprise have to register at the customs, and also they need to have a token when applying the certificate. So this is some steps. First, it's the application is completely paperless, and there's a single window portal. The enterprise can use this single window to apply for the CO. And also during the submitting, a data pool was created to gather information. So that will be very useful for customs to analyze and monitoring the FTA. So this the data we collect during the application, like the goods, the HS code, the criterion, the value, etc. So, and then when customs receive the application, we apply a risk management system to help us to issue the certificate. We create different rules to let the computer to check the eligibility of the application, and we also set up some parameters for risk profiling, and if needed, human intervention will be introduced. And then to help the enterprise to further get the CO more easier, we introduced this self-service printing in 2019. And just as I mentioned before, it is a printed version by themselves, and it saved their time and costs. And now there are 16 kind of certificates that the enterprise can print by themselves. This is the benefit, as I just mentioned before. So there's still a way to improve, as now we need to expand the acceptance between trading partners to let more trading partners to accept the enterprise to print themselves the CO, and we also have to increase the security and the anti-counterfeiting measures for those certificates. Okay, that's for the self-service printing. And now it's for, I will introduce the declaration of origin based on the approved exporter scheme. So now it is the trend that for the FTAs to include this declaration of origin in the rules of origin. And now China has introduced this scheme in our China-Switzerland FTA and the China-Iceland FTA back to 2013. And in the 2017, we also introduced the declaration of origin in the LDC PTA scheme. It is a scheme based on the customs advance ruling. And recently it is in the China-Mauritius FTA and also the RCEP. So we create a legal framework for this declaration. We released a customs decree, which allowed exporters to become the approved exporters and have given the authorities to issue declaration for themselves. There are several requirements for enterprise to become approved exporter. First, they must be an enterprise with high level of compliance. Now, currently, we only allow the enterprise that is the advanced certified enterprise in our AEO program. Besides, we also must ask the enterprise to be well understand the rules of origin under the relevant preferential treatment. And also they must have a sound document management system for proving their product's origin qualification. And we also create IT platform for the approved exporters. They can submitting application to become the approved exporter. They can also use this platform to issue their DO. And we also collect their informations to a data pool. So it is better, it is for the preparation of the exchanging and also for the monitoring of our FTA. And now we also established EODS on declaration on DO with our trade partner. Now we exchange this information with New Zealand, and we under the China-New Zealand FTA and also under the RCEP. And this is the formatted data transfer. And we also have non-formatted data transfer. It is like sending scanned copies to trade partner. Now it's China-Switzerland FTA. We're doing like this. Switzerland send their scanned copy of DO to China. And for this DO, we also have a long way to make it work better and to make it benefit a wider range of the enterprise, because now we only allowed enterprise of the more trusted enterprise to become the AE. In the future, we will start to allow small, medium, or micro enterprises to become the AE. And also, we would like to work with our trading partners to let them accept to include the DO articles in the future FTA and to exchange DO informations in the future. Okay, that's the content of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. Very interesting and quite comprehensive as well. A lot of work in different areas regarding certification of origin for China. Well, I propose to hear our last speaker with a presentation about Thailand's initiatives towards paperless origin certification. That would be Mrs. Piachat Sorteb, who's the director of the Trade Preference Division at the Department of Foreign Trade in the Ministry of Commerce of Thailand. Piachat, it will be a pleasure to listen to you. You may start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening from Bangkok, Thailand here. And thank you, Darren, and also Simon and everyone. Can you see? Okay. And also thank you everyone in the WTO Secretariat for having me here today to share about the Thailand initiative towards paperless origin certification process. I'm Piyachat Sawtip, as I've been introduced, the Director of the Trade Preference Division, Department of Foreign Trade, Ministry of Commerce of Thailand. Today agenda that I will cover is Today agenda will be the about the trade facilitating measure related to the rules of origin. We'll cover 4 topics of this. First is the Department of Foreign Trade and OE services and certificate of origin issuance process. And the third one is the electronic certificate of origin, or the e-Atika Form D, as we heard earlier from our colleague from UNESCO, and also the upcoming services in in Thailand here. Okay, I start with the first one is the rules of the Department of Foreign Trade. Our department was established in 1942. We are responsible for the formulation and also implementation of policy and regulations related to foreign trade. And in the area of the rules of origin, we are a competent authority conducting the origin verification, and also we are the sole issuing authority in Thailand for the preferential certificate of origin, as well as a competent governmental body administering the export and import licensing and origin certification of the non-preferential certification. Okay, the Department of Foreign Trade, we aim to facilitate all the import and export businesses and also reduce the processing time and cost by offering a number of the digital services. We have about 15 services, e-services provided for our exporter. Here are some of the example of services. The first 4 of these services is related to the certification of origin issuance process. The first one is composed of the exporter importer ID card. This part grant the access for the various digital services that have in our Department of Foreign Trade. And the second one is a rules of origin verification system. I have to say that this is somewhat similar to like the assessment tools or ROSA that EU has introduced earlier, and but it's a little simplified one. And the third one is the certificate of origin issuance system, which used for both the preferential and non-preferential CO. And the fourth one is the cross-check or the verification of the that we enable customs and related authority of the importing party, importing country to authenticate the authenticity of certificate of origin. And we also have other e-services, for example, like licensing, also e-quota that is enable importer to apply for the import quota allocation of the agricultural goods under the WTO. Or these are the example of the system. Okay, let's move on the transformation of the CO issuance system. The DFT, the Department of Foreign Trade has taken, I have to say that, taken significant improvement in upgrading certificate of origin issuing process for all the time. At first, it was a thing like 20 years ago. We still using the manual process. So the application and all the supporting documented has to be submitted in hard copy. And that takes us for like 3 days per one documented issue, one single certificate of origin. And then it's come to the electronic data interchange. And this one, when we can have the application in electronic, but still the supporting the document has to be in a hard copy, and still we have to manually sign and stamp. So at the time, it was taken, reduced the time significantly from 3 days to 30 minutes, and then we keep improving it. We changed it to the, when we introduced the digital signature, now the application and all the documented can submit it online with the digital signature, but still have to manually sign and seal. And then after that, we introduced the electronic signature and seal. So at this time, at this technology, the sign and seal can also be electronically. And at the top of the development that we have here is the electronic form, or the e-form, ECO. It's a real-time data transmission, which is now only available under the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, or ATICA, and is for this CO I will elaborate later on. Okay, here is this slide. You can see we start implement our electronic system in 2003, and then the introduction of the digital signature in 2011, and we started the e-form. At first was exchanges among among our 5 ASEAN member states: Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and also Vietnam. And in the regional level, actually ASEAN also aim to enhance its trade efficiency and competitiveness by enabling electronic exchange of the trade-related document among ASEAN member states through the ASEAN Single Window Initiative. So since January that we have starting our first in December 30 of 2019, marked the day that we have the full live operation of the ATICA e-form among our 10 member states, ASEAN member states. And for the second topic about the certification of origin, certificate of origin issuance process. For this part is I will focus this part focus on how our Department of Foreign Trade integrated in the digital innovation in the certificate of origin issuance. This is a flow chart of the issuance process of both preferential and non-preferential CO that we issue. I will go the step by step here. The first step is the simple register and apply for the exporter and importer card. For this one, it is for us to have the database of our exporter, and for the exporter, they will receive the username and password to access all of our services. And the second one, this is a step for the exporter to check. The exporter can check the basic information required such as the relevant HS code and of the goods, and also the list of the eligible product for the preferential tariff treatment under the FTA, and also their rules of origin and the tariff rate. And this information is available on our system of the origin verification system. And after that, they will have to apply for the pre-exportation verification or and the origin approval. The exporter is required to submit an application form like declaration of course, and also the production process of the goods, and also other documented such as copy of the business registration, copy of factory license, invoice, and other required document. But this one can be the scanned file uploaded into the system, so our authority can check on that detail. And here is the system. Here, what show on this screen, you can see that because it's all in Thai. I didn't do all the live operation on the system, but what show in here screen is an example of the tools for qualified or the value content criteria that we have here. It is detail of the production of the cost per 1 unit of the goods. The exporter must input data of the production cost and the material used in production in order to calculate the value content of the product. Like for example here, the number 1 here is said it is a value of the originating material. The first part is the in-house production or domestically procured material. And the second part is the import originating material in accordance with the accumulation rules under the FTA. And also like number 2 here showing, is the value of the imported non-originating material that used in production. Number 3 is other costs, and number 4 is profit that you have per 1 unit of the production. And number 5 is the ex-work price, and number 6 is the transportation cost that will occur, and number 7 is the FOB price. At last, it's come to the percentage or the value added of the value content on the ex-work price or the FOB price. And this system, we can also be used as a tool for the exporter to examine on the compliance of the origin criteria by themselves. If they don't submit this to us, they can get access into the system and use it as a self-assessment for the origin criteria compliance as well. And and actually in this system, we also cover all the origin criteria, such as the change in tariff classification or the specific process on the textile product, something like that. And with this one, after submitted everything, there will be the approval paper showing here that what rules that they pass and what FTA that they will use, the HS code and the country that they will send, the criteria they pass or get approved or not approved. And after this, after getting the origin approval, now the exporter can apply for the CO through the certificate of origin issuance system, which can be submitted by filling in the application form on our website, or it can also be submitted in XML format with the supporting document with the digital signature. So with the XML format, they don't have to fill in all the detail of the data again. The data is directly transmitted into the system of the Department of Foreign Trade. And once the CO application is approved, then the applicant will still have to come to our office or our provincial office that we have around the country to collect the physical certificate of origin. Okay. Because we're still using the paper certificate of origin there. And also the step 5. The step 5 is a verified system. We have the Thailand certificate online inquiry system, we call that. For this one, it is the e-verification system that enable custom and also other authority of importing country to check on this, whether it is an authentic CO that issued by the Department of Foreign Trade or not. The custom, actually the password and username already distributed to all the custom, and the custom can log in and fill in the reference number, and the system will automatically display on the detail and the information of the subject certificate of origin, including the status or description, gross weight and value, and declare invoice number. Okay. But in case that the system cannot, the reference number cannot be found, the system will display information as follow. So caution, the custom will have caution whether is this the real authentic one or is this the fake one of the CO. But sometimes it's also happen because of the system. So we have the email here that can contact to our Department of Foreign Trade. Okay, so the third topic I will cover, dealing with this time constraint, I will go a little bit fast here. As I mentioned briefly earlier, that ASEAN has implemented ASEAN single window that connected and integrated the national single windows of the ASEAN member state to electronically exchange of data between the member state. This Atika eForm D is the only eForm D that Thailand implemented today. And for ASEAN and eForm D, for ASEAN, eForm D is certificate of origin that is structured in accordance with the Atika eForm D process specification and message implementation guideline and is transmitted electronically between the member state via ASEAN single window. For the exporter, the process to apply for the ATICA e-Form D is everything similar to application for other certificate of origin, except that they do not need to correct the physical CO anymore, because after the CO application is approved by the by officer, all the data will be transmitted through the Thailand National Single Window, and then to the ASEAN Single Window, and then to the custom of importing party. The current status of the e-Form D among our ASEAN member states is that today 4 of our member states, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, we have already fully issued and received of the e-Form D. The hard copy of the Form D are only issued and accepted at the special request of the exporter, or when there is a trouble about like technical issue happen. And for the other 6, composed of Brunei, Darussalam, Cambodia, Laos, Laos PDR, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Singapore are still using both hard copy and of Form D and e-Form D. Okay. And for the implementation challenges that we have facing here, first thing I have to say that is still our habit of our exporter or the importer habit to use the hard copy of the Form D when they declare for the preferential treatment. And another one is the recurrence of the technical issue of the relevant system, which result in the difficulty in claiming the preferential treatment. And also it's come from the objection of some private sector due to the incomplete e-Form D electronic message flow, which cause also the trouble in claiming for the preferential treatment. And actually right now, our technical working group under the ASEAN single window is still working toward the full implementation of the said e-Form D electronic message flow, which composed of 4 steps. The first is the sending and e-Form D, and the second is returning of the custom response. The third one is canceling and e-Form D, and the fourth one is queuing and e-Form D. As of now, only the sending and e-Form D data is fully implemented by all of our ASEAN member states. And as the way forward, actually our member state has put forward the 2023 priority economic deliverable to fully implemented e-Form D 100%, sending and receiving e-Form D data by everyone, by all the ASEAN member states this year. Okay, come to the last part of here, the upcoming service that we have next year. In the early next year, our Department of Foreign Trade will also upgrade the current certificate of origin issuance system. It is no longer requiring the exporter to visit to our office or our provincial office, as the service can be self-printed or can be offered electronically. They can print it from the office. They can do the self-printed with this system that we will launch the early of next year. And the transaction will be more secure with the eKYC and also the 2-factor authentication. And this new system is with the objective to increase the security and prevent the fraudulent use of the certificate of origin issued by the DFT. For example, the stakeholder can now be able to verify the authenticity by scanning the QR code, and it will appear the whole certificate of origin, like how it looks like and all the detail, if it's correct or not. And also, we will soon because the electronic certificate of origin not only increase transparency, also save our costs and time, but also provide a secure trade environment. And we are working on that with our FTA partner to implement the CECO soon. Within next 2 years, we will be the ECO will be introduced under Japan-Thailand Economic Partnership Agreement. And also other FTA we are exploring this opportunity, such as Thailand, Australia Free Trade Agreement, and also ASEAN-China Free Trade Area. Okay, here is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your all attention here today. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piachat. This was also very interesting. I think we all retain this impressive number which you gave, which is the fact that the implementation of application and issuance of electronic certificates reduced the application time and issuance time from 3 days to almost real time. So this is really quite impressive. And I hope other countries will find inspiration in this to engage in similar projects. This brings us to the end of our program today. Let me just remind you that all the presentations are already available in the event page in the Rules of Origin web page in the WTO website. The full recording of the session will also be available in that same link as soon as we finish this webinar. So I'm only left now with, I think, a very sincere thanks to the speakers who have contributed to making this a lively and an interesting webinar. A big thanks on behalf of the WTO and its member states. And also a big thank to the Rules of Origin team here at the WTO who helped put this webinar together. Simone Neumüller here, Elena Giraud, and Rosé Mitey. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.